Today, we'll find out how many shark species are yet to be discovered, and in our Shark Bite segment, we'll reveal the oldest shark fossil ever to be found.
You're listening to the Shark Week podcast.
G'day everyone, welcome to Shark Week the podcast. I'm your host Luke Tipple, and today we're talking about how to find animals that are yet to be discovered and what it's like to look one directly in the eye. Now, before we get too deep into things, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like the video, and ring that little bell so you never miss another one of our weekly podcasts. When we talk about searching for undiscovered animals, you might start to think about, mad scientists looking for the abominable snowman or Bigfoot or other such nonsense like that. But outside of that pseudoscience, there are a few intrepid scientists, legitimate ones, who are pushing the boundaries of discovery. They're looking in places where animals should be, or where they think they could be, but they've yet to be found or they've yet to be discovered. With me today is a champion of the unknown, Forrest Galante. Now, you've seen him before. He's been on Shark Week many times, and in his career, he's found 8 different species that were thought to be extinct. That's 8 of them. I mean, we thought they were gone, but he found them, which is so cool. He's the host of the Wild Times podcast, and his new special premieres on this year's Shark Week. Now, Forrest, we started out this podcast by asking a question: how many sharks are yet to be discovered? Can you answer that for us?
Yeah, I mean, not with an exact number, but I would say there are...
Interview's over.
Oh, there we go. That was quick. I bet there are several dozen species, and I'm not talking about new speciation as though taking, known existing species and delineating them from other known existing species. But I think, especially in the deep sea, there are still, at minimum, several dozen large shark species to be found, benthic shark species that are down deep. And, I think there are some up higher as well, probably in the intertidal and really remote parts, like along the Wallace Line and places like that. I think there's a lot to be found. Anybody who thinks we've discovered it all is losing it.
Let's start with how you would form an opinion that there's so much more to be found. Give us that sort of basic framework of your scientific methodology.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's very arrogant to assume we know everything and we've seen everything as human beings. So as far as how do you think that there are new species out there and what would lead to that? Well, it's quite simple, really. You look at, biological hotspots, you look at places that are understudied, and you put the two together. You go, all right, here's an area that has incredible species diversity. In the same area, let's say Borneo, there's very limited funding, very limited research going into finding species in places like this. You talk to a specialist like Dr. Dave Ebert and go, hey, Dave, what do you think? Are there other species here? He checks through his records and his archives and goes, yeah, there's a couple weird critters that washed up in collections and museums in the last 200 years that we don't really know what they are. Bing, bang, boom, you go, all right, well, there's got to be some species over there that we just don't know that much about. Whether it's a new species, it's misidentified, it's mislabeled, we really don't know. And so you go to Discovery with your hand out like Oliver Twist and say, please, sir, can I have some more money, that is, and take that and head into the field and try and find these species and turn it into, some substantial research.
So how often are you actually setting out hoping to find something completely new, or do you kind of expect to find, I think you said before, speciation, do you find a different coloration or a different type of pajama shark, for example, or do you go and, hope to find something that we've never seen before?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the best way to lead into something like that is with an educated guess, meaning I think we're going to find something new, or I think that if we take this existing pajama shark and look at the fact that two oceans meet here and there are these natural barriers, whatever they happen to be, geographical barriers, can we figure out that these are new species? But the key to it is really just open-mindedness. It's going there with an open mind and going, I'm going to look at everything and just soak it all in and try and understand it all and build this framework of what the system looks like and the species within it and what roles they play. So I think, truth be told, there's no really knowing, it's not like when, and I haven't done this in several years now, when we were focusing on finding lost species that were lost to science, it's more like going in with an open mind, going, what species are there? What can we find? And more importantly, what methodologies have not been applied before that could potentially turn up a shark that other methodologies wouldn't? Is that deep water camera trapping? Is that a certain type of baiting? Is that checking in a high turbidity zone where nobody's ever been able to dive and very little fishing's taken place and you caught net, and the list goes on and on. It's sort of doing this creative puzzle solving to put together a picture that tells you what to try so that you can figure out what could be there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, you're really just, taking all the information that you have, your education and your desire as well. Let's not forget that. Obviously, you're highly motivated to get out into the field and put yourself through a heck of a lot of pain and suffering to go and find something out there. Tell us about that. Why did you stop going after kind of the lost species?
It's not so much that we stopped going after the lost species. I mean, it's still something we do, even, as recently as last year when we were in Peru working on a human-wildlife conflict with spectacled bears. We found a species of blind snake that hadn't been seen in 70 years. With that species of blind snake, that was a massive find. The thing is, most people would never have known. They would have looked at it and gone, oh, that's a weird little earthworm, or that's a strange snake, and moved on. But as far as why we've done that, I mean, my objective in life has always been to promote and bring a love of conservation to the masses, and we did Extinctor Alive for a number of very successful seasons and a number of very successful Shark Weeks. And then, the idea was always to go bigger and broader. It's not just as black and white as looking for an extinct species or not. It's what species are still out there. What do we not know about? What discoveries can we make? What non-lethal human-wildlife mitigation methods can we employ so that animals aren't winding up dead and headed towards the extinction list? And so just really doing a much larger umbrella of conservation programming. And, it's been pretty successful. It's going really well. It's really fun.
Yeah, I forgive the bluntness of this question, but who cares, or why do people care about this?
Oh, no, that's a good question. I've always said this. You care, in order to care about wildlife, you have to fall in love with it, right? And in order to fall in love with it, you have to experience it. And so whether that means sitting on your couch during Shark Week or going out for a hike in the woods or a scuba dive or a mountain climb, whatever it is, until you make the conscious decision to go and experience it one way or another, you don't have the ability to care for it. And only once you begin to care about it, do you begin to love it and protect it. And all that is to say, why is this important? I mean, Luke, it's the most important thing in the world. And I think people tend to forget that. And the reason being, I like to draw the analogy that the planet is like a giant game of Jenga. Okay? The game Jenga with the tiles, and you pull out one tile. You're like, great, this thing's going to last all day. It's super sturdy. You pull out 2 or 3 more tiles, 4 or 5 more tiles. All of a sudden, that tower is getting pretty wobbly. And it all comes down to that very last tile. Now, we don't know what that tile could be. That could be an extinction event. That could be an air pollutant. That could be a forest fire. We really don't know what that last tile could be. But eventually, you pull out that tile, and the whole thing collapses. And that's a really good analogy for our planet, And we're at a point now where the tower's kind of shaky. And if we don't care about those tile pieces, then we're going to see global collapse. So not to be all doom and gloom and the bearer of bad news, but there's a lot to be positive about. But, we should all care, because ultimately, if we see that tower collapse, everything goes. If the ecosystems collapse, human life ceases to exist as we know it. No amount of AI or Elon Musking can fix that, it will all disappear. So everybody should care. And further to that, why wouldn't you care? It's the coolest freaking thing in the world, right? As you grow up, when you're a kid, you flip over a log, you see an earthworm, you freak out. You're like, oh my God, look at this worm. Why are we choosing to grow out of that? We shouldn't grow out of that. We should grow into that. We should care more about it, learn more about it. Like, people love this stuff when they're kids. Every kid loves animals. And then for some reason, some societal lame reason, we tend to grow out of it. So I think, just embrace it.
I think I've got the answer to that. We've talked about it on another episode. I think that answer is, financial reality. People fall in love with things that might be chasing animals around. For me, it was, diving a whole bunch, finding different fish, or whatever. And then you hit that inflection point where you go, okay, am I going to get serious about this, or am I going to get serious about life? And some people choose to say, I can't find a way to monetize chasing animals around the world. But then certainly, there's Forrest Galante, who's managed to do that.
But
so I'm just going to watch him on TV.
You're looking at it from a career standpoint. I mean, choose to do this instead of play golf, right? Choose to do this instead of go to the movie theaters. I'm not saying 100 times out of 100 because, God, everyone would burn out, right? I'd burn out if I didn't lounge on my couch and watch Game of Thrones here and there, But the point being, like, just make the decision once in a while to embrace nature and immerse yourself in it. And whatever form you want to do that in will lead to caring and passion. It's when you become entirely numb to it when you don't make the conscious decision to embrace it, at least from time to time.
What are the pressures that you feel? Okay, so you're sitting on the couch watching Game of Thrones. You come back from some big expedition. Do you think I need to think of the next idea to go make a TV show, or do you think there's actually something going on, with a cyclone or environmental pressure or something that's going on, and if we don't figure out what's happening in that one spot in the globe, like now, we're going to lose it forever?
It's certainly a hybrid of both, because of the model that we do in order to fund our conservation work with my production company and everything else. We need places like Discovery Channel in order to fund our work, right? That's part of the model. So I'm always thinking, what is the next show? But when I think, what is the next TV show, or we go into developing a project or a show, it's not just because Forrest wants to go play with epaulets or whatever it happens to be, right? It's more like because, okay, what's critical? What needs exposure? What species are undervalued or on the brink of extinction or just need more research? And then we bring that into a television show format, whether that's, learning about the relationship between tiger sharks and sea snakes because tiger sharks are randomly washing up dead, or that's learning about the high levels of endemism in South Africa because some of those sharks are poorly studied, and that we're seeing orcas predate on, now the second, not even the top, but the second highest predator in the food chain, and the fact that that's underexposed, and so it's like it's painting this picture of what thing in conservation is dire, critical, and needs exposure, and what also would make a good, compelling TV show. Because if I go out there and go, hey, Discovery Channel, I want to make a show about this really like slow life cycle grasshopper, they're going to laugh at me, right? And the viewers probably would too, They'd be like, why did I just watch 48 minutes on a grasshopper? But if you go, oh, this is super cool shark and this amazing ecosystem and this plethora of wildlife, and there's this critical conservation message, and we're going to tell it in this really compelling way on a giant platform like Shark Week or whatever it happens to be, let's bring that all together and paint this picture. Everybody wins. Like, Discovery wins, they get good ratings. I win because I get to go do these super fun adventures and cool wildlife expeditions. The viewer wins because it's compelling. The species wins because exposure and attention are brought to them, and oftentimes funding. Like, everybody wins, which is great.
Yeah. So you just went out on an expedition, and I've just seen some tape on it where you're looking for Sevengills. It's something I've wanted to do for forever, and it looked like quite a mission. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, my more recent expedition was I was out at the California Channel Islands, which is right out my window right here, and I shot a white sea bass 3 days ago, and as I was pulling it in, a Sevengill came and chomped it in half. I have a picture of it I'll send you. But before that,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, this big old shark came and ate half of my fish. But recently, a couple months ago, I was in South Africa, and we were working on a new Shark Week special, Alien Sharks. And what's cool about that is South Africa has one of the highest levels of endemism of sharks anywhere in the planet, meaning more different species of sharks occur in South Africa than anywhere else on the planet, which is very, very cool. So we went there to look into all these species while also incorporating an important conservation message, as we said, which is the fact that, as many people know, as I'm sure you know, Luke, two infamous orcas, Port and Starboard, moved into South Africa about 5 years ago now and just started decimating the great white shark population. Now, this is a natural system. These things happen in nature. What's caused it, nobody really knows, but it's certainly, the orcas, we always think of great white sharks as the top of the food chain, but orcas come in, they bully and beat up these great white sharks, they kill them, and they eat their livers and move on. And it's sort of become a game for these two brothers, Port and Starboard. Well, guess what? About a year and a half ago, South Africa ran out of white sharks, or all the white sharks moved on, and there was another big shark in the ecosystem, which was the Sevengill shark, which is massive, eats seals and sea lions similar to white sharks, gets really big, has a big fatty liver, and all of a sudden the orcas went, we're out of white sharks. Well, check these guys out. And they have taken a population of Sevengills that was just booming down to near nothing. And so we went there to go, well, wait a minute. are there still Sevengills? And if so, where? Because, there aren't still white sharks, or if there are, they're few and far between. What's going on with the Sevengill population? This weird prehistoric shark that's been around, millions of years. It predates trees. Where have they gone? And have these two orcas single-handedly driven them to localized extinction? And the answer, well, I don't know if people will have watched it by the time they hear this or not, but the answer is in our recent Shark Week special, Alien Sharks. And it's very cool where we found them and very unexpected.
Let's give people some visual of that. And Sarah, could you pull up that footage of the Sevengills that they got?
Yeah, I sure can. All right, here we go.
Obviously, there's this podcast going over video and audio, but right now we're looking at footage of Forrest and his crew. They're underwater. It looks very dark. Is this nighttime or dusk, or when is it?
Broad daylight. That's the key to where we found them. So we went to around the Cape Town area of South Africa where their population used to boom, and we dove all of the regular spots. Right, we dove in the kelp forest near to the infamous Seal Island where you see the white sharks breaching. We free dove it, which I wouldn't recommend anybody ever try and do. We dove there. We dove in sandy, shallow areas. We dove really deep, and we were not finding these Sevengills. And what we did, in fact, find were the two infamous orcas, port and starboard, talk about a needle in a haystack, that came right by us. So when I called my friend Ryan Daly at USHACA, who was really looking for this data and helping me along in this research, I said to him, listen, man, I've got bad news. Like, we've managed to find these other critically endangered sharks that you're looking for. We've collected a ton of data, but the main, driver for being here, which was trying to locate whether or not there are still Sevengills extant in the area, we have failed. And Ryan basically said to me, while I was walking around in a harbor, he goes, well, look, the only place you're going to find a Sevengill is where the orcas don't go. And I was like, where the orcas don't go? Like the harbor that I'm standing in. And so sure enough, in a large commercial fishing harbor, we decided to splash right in. And the reason that looks so dark, the reason that looks like a night dive, is that is underneath an overhanging pier, and that's all stone. And they are not surviving in that harbor. They're absolutely thriving. I mean, I would say that we had well over a dozen, anywhere from 7 to 10 and 11 foot long sharks in this harbor seeking refuge from the orcas. And it's one of the few times in my career that I've ever seen truly gigantic megafaunal wildlife thriving due to human intervention and development, which, it's not intervention in the traditional sense of like humans came in to help. It's literal human development that has caused the species to be able to maintain while these two orcas are on their killing spree.
Oh, that's absolutely nuts. So, yeah, they're hiding out in the harbor where you wouldn't think they would be. I mean, I imagine there's food for them there then.
There must be. There's a lot of fish in the harbors there. The marine life is just substantial. But, you look at that video, you can see there's old tractor tires and fishing line and cans and socks and all kinds of stuff that you would never associate with 1 Shark Week, 2 spectacular diving. And sure enough, here are these magnificent creatures completely hidden from the orcas.
Hey, what does it look like when a Sevengill comes and takes your catch? I mean, I've speared any number of fish and had them taken by like bull sharks and other reef sharks, things like that, but never a prehistoric, great big blunt nosed thing that looks like, I don't know what, it kind of looks like a earthworm that has fins and lives underwater with great big teeth.
Yeah, they're heinous really as far as like the beauty contest of
really
sharks go. What does it look like? Well, I shot the sea bass. It was probably about a 50-pound sea bass, and it went down and wrapped up in the kelp. And I came up for my breath of air, and I went down to cut it out of the kelp. And as I started coming down, I just saw this big, intergalactic spaceship of a shark dawdling towards it. And it goes from very serene and slow to, oh my, half my fish is gone in a very, very short amount of time. And so, yeah,
so
he just
they
came
still
along.
have that burst that they can put on and
Absolutely.
come towards you, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And he didn't come at me at all because the fish was tied up in the kelp. He just went for the fish. But yeah, went towards him, slurped him right in and spat half of him out. I went down and pushed the shark off the fish and then cut the kelp and took the rest of the fish up. But I just got a head and about 1.5 feet of meat behind it, and the rest was gone.
Well, you got a cool story out of it, that's worth it sometimes, yeah. And you also saw something else that I thought was really cool, and we don't often see it. You saw sharks mating. Actually, Sarah, pull up that video while Forrest tells us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how many times in history sharks have been documented mating, video documented mating in the wild. So I was thrilled, and it certainly was not something that we anticipated. And so what's most interesting about this is what you're looking at here are pajama cat sharks, okay? These beautiful striped sharks are an endemic species to South Africa. They're just adorable. Like, they come in, they literally, I mean this, take it as anthropomorphism. I don't care. They literally come in and cuddle you. Like, they nose into your armpit and nose into your hands, and they just want to feel you out because their eyesight's not great. And they're just adorable flipping sharks. And while we're on this dive and these sharks are all over us, I'm putting them into tonic, I'm rolling them around, everything else. One of these sharks comes swimming along with a crayfish in its mouth that it's just killed or is in the process of dying. And these things go ballistic. Like, there's 2 or 3 dozen of them around us, and they just go into this frenzied mentality where they're all just ripping this crayfish to shreds, right? And you see it in the footage in the show. And the reason I tell you all that is this frenzied mentality of all these sharks rubbing against each other in competition for this crayfish obviously invoked some kind of male-female mating response, because at some point the male came, my cameraman goes, "Hey, the sharks are fighting," which I think we cut out of the show. But, what ends up happening is this male comes along and just nails this female right behind her head towards her gills, and all of a sudden wraps her up and inserts into her cloaca, and they drift to the bottom. And it had to be from that overstimulation of the crayfish and one finding it in amongst this like chaos and them all just rubbing against each other. And I mean, you can see it. There's the visibility is like 3 foot because they're just stirring up so much sediment, and it's such chaos, and the surge is massive. We're getting slammed against the rocks and everything, and it was fun, man. I've never seen sharks mate before. It was incredible to see it like in front of my own eyes in the wild, undisturbed. And we watched the entire copulation. So from latch, where the male bit onto the female, to intertwining her, to inserting his claspers, to releasing and swimming away at the very end with that little like sperm tail wiggle. And it was really neat to see. Yeah, I've never seen it before. And my cameraman came up and he was like, "Oh my God, did you see that?" Like, yeah, of course we saw it. Yeah, it was really fun.
So what you're saying is, if we want to catch a shark's mating, all we need to do is create like massive orgy-style feeding frenzies where they can all just rub up against each other and see if the mood strikes them at the same time.
I think that is the ticket, Luke, which we did not intend to do, but it sure works.
I've been causing feeding frenzies for years and never seen that. Like, maybe we need to find the right stuff. Maybe it's crayfish. What if we could get, a great big, truck of crayfish and put it in the middle of Guadalupe Island and see a whole bunch of great whites just get it on?
You need to pick up a Red Lobster sponsorship, because that's going to be a pretty penny on chum there.
Right? That'd be crazy. I'm stoked you got that experience. Hey, what would be the toolkit that you'd give somebody who wanted to follow kind of a path that you have? You say, hey, instead of golfing, go out and spend time in nature. What if somebody actually wanted to be doing what you were doing?
That's a really simple question, and the answer is passion. Nobody needs to do exactly what I'm doing. What people need to do that care about wildlife and the outdoors is forge their own path. And I mean that literally and metaphorically. Like, you need to get out there and do your own thing in the wild world. It doesn't matter if you fall in love with beetles or turtles or eagles or lions. It doesn't matter what the creature is, what the field of study is. The point is, passion is the thing that is going to see you through it, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies. I spend tons of time pulling my hair out, whether I'm stressed over the next show, or when we're going to be able to fund something, or whether I'm literally curled in the fetal position from dysentery, sunstroke, heat stroke, whatever, food poisoning, whatever it happens to be. It's the passion for the craft that makes me pull through that and continue on to the next thing. And I think that the same thing can be said for anybody. It's having tenacity, and it's having a passion for doing something, and the rest comes naturally, right? A good pair of boots, a great GPS, a nice pair of binoculars, whatever. We can talk gear until the cows come home, but what you need in order to really hone in on all of that is the passion for it.
Yeah. Well, that passion certainly comes through. And I've said it to you before, your shows are always my favorite to watch because it's real.
Sure.
I mean it. When I watch something that you guys put together, I know that you've done the work. I know you've gone out and slogged just through hell sometimes to get the footage that you get. And what you end up with is a piece that is truly worthy of watching and also, demonstrative of the work that you put in and the results that you get, which is something new. We figured out something new. Who knew that, Sevengills live under piers?
Right. Exactly.
So this episode, Alien Sharks, why should people watch it? What are they going to learn?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of this was Discovery wanted to reboot that franchise of Alien Sharks, which is such a great thing to do because it's a look into the weird, wacky, and unusual sharks. We get a gazillion shows every year on white sharks and tiger sharks, and while they certainly have their place, I think there's another place for the underrepresented animals, and you see that in our shows. You see these sharks like striped pajama sharks having an orgy, which you had no idea you were going to see. So, there's a lot of fun in our shows. And I think Alien Sharks is just a perfect opportunity to do show and tell of these animals that are underrepresented that allow people to, again, going back to my original point, fall in love with something different, fall in love with a different style of shark. Maybe people, if one kid watches this show and goes, oh my God, all I want to do is learn about how puff-adder or shy sharks glow in the dark, which is a component of this episode, then we now have a future researcher on the bioluminescent properties of shark skin, which is an incredible thing like we've achieved, even if just one kid likes that. So yeah, I think there's a lot to see in this show. There's certainly a ton of shark species. I don't remember, we did a count jokingly in the edit room. I think there's like 19 species in this episode. So there's a lot going on. Yeah. And so I'm excited for people to check it out.
Okay, so we've got glow-in-the-dark sharks, we've got mating sharks, we've got sharks getting hunted by orcas that are now living, squirreled away in weird harbors somewhere that you guys have to fling yourselves into. I think you've done yourself pretty good here, mate.
Yeah,
We're enjoying
thanks, buddy.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right, well, go out on your next adventure, come back and have a chat again. Can't wait to speak to you again.
Thanks for having me.
And now it's time for our Shark Bite, where we leave you with one cool ocean fact for the day. Sierra, what do you got for us?
Yeah, this week I've got a new discovery about sharks that makes us reconsider the evolutionary timeline for every animal on Earth.
Ooh, I like that. Sharks, cornerstone species. Let's go.
Yeah, all right. So paleontologists found a new species of an extinct fish that was discovered in the Guizhou province of China. And this species was from a class called acanthodians, which are the earliest ancestors of modern sharks.
How old are we talking to start with? I mean, sharks are 400 million years old or something like that?
They say that the age of fishes came along like 420 million years ago, and this new species predates that by 15 million years.
So how does this change our evolutionary history of sharks?
The age of fishes, when fish started to develop, is estimated about 420 million years ago, and the discovery of this new species pushes that back. So now there's estimates that this jawed species was around 440 million years ago.
And that could be the common ancestor of sharks, which would make the evolutionary history of sharks a little bit older.
Yep, absolutely, pushing it back by 40 million years.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I'm going to have to retool my usual 400 million years of evolution comments and change it to 440. Thanks so much, Sierra. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
That's it for today. Thanks to Forrest Galante for joining us. It's always such a treat to chat to him, and I hope you learned something. Until next time, I'm Luke Tipple. I'll chat to you soon.
You're listening to the Shark Week podcast.